Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Samir Benegadi. I'm pleased to be your MC for tonight. I would like first of all to call upon Sheikh Khalid Talib, the Secretary of the Council of Imams of New South Wales, to start our evening with some verses from the Quran. Sheikh Khalid, please.
السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. فسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها وكذلك تخرجون ومن آياته أن خلقكم من تراب ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم إن في ذلك لآيات للعالمين. صدق.
Hello?
Thank you, Sheikh Khalid. I would like to start with acknowledging the traditional owners of this land. I acknowledge that we are meeting tonight on the lands of the Wangal people. I acknowledge them and acknowledge the Koori people of New South Wales generally. And I pay respect to them and to their ancestors and to their elders as well. Australia, ladies and gentlemen, is viewed as one of the oldest continuous democracies in the world. The Commonwealth of Australia was created in 1901, so we're talking about well over 110 years. And to enable the tradition to go ahead and to continue with the generations to come, we are here tonight to honor the initiative of His Eminence, Dr. Ibrahim Abu Muhammad, the Grand Mufti of Australia, and the National Council of Imams, to enable as well the community to discuss matters and issues that are of an importance to the Australian Muslim community and to the Australian wider community as well. The audience tonight is very diverse. It comprises of people from more than 20 backgrounds, Arabs and Asians, non-Arabs, all Australians, but from different backgrounds. It also comprises of people from different walks of lives. We've got doctors here with us tonight, we've got engineers, we've got school principals, school teachers, we've got housewives, and we've got unemployed people, and we've got also students who are the future of this country. I would like also to acknowledge a list of people who have given themselves the trouble to make their way from Canberra, starting by Her Excellency Ambassador Rima Ala ad-Din, the Ambassador of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Welcome, Ambassador. I would like also to welcome His Excellency the Ambassador Nabil al-Saleh, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to Australia. Thank you, Your Honor. I would like also to welcome His Excellency, the Ambassador Yusuf Al-Khatar, the Ambassador of Qatar to Australia. Thank you, Your Honor. I also would like to welcome the Ambassador Misbah Lafi, the Ambassador of the Republic of Libya, as well as welcoming His Excellency Ambassador Ayman Kamel, the General Counsel of Egypt to Sydney. Welcome to them all. And also we have, along with the good list of ambassadors, we have a very rich and diverse number of politicians, comprising of ministers, MPs, and candidates, which we will present with a very short and brief introduction later on in the evening. I'm now honored to call upon His Eminence, Dr. Ibrahim Abu Muhammad, the General Mufti of Australia, to serve his welcoming speech. The speech will be translated right after he finishes into English. Your Eminence, please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. باسمي وباسم زملائي السادة العلماء أعضاء مجلس الأئمة المحلي والفيدرالي، وباسم نصف مليون مسلم استرالي، يسعدني أن أرحب بكم في هذا اللقاء، وأبدأ شاكراً وممتناً للسادة الوزراء والنواب والسفراء الذين تحملوا مشقة المجيء إلى هنا ليساهموا معنا في جمال هذا اللقاء ونجاحه. كما أشكر السادة الضيوف أهلنا الذين أسعدونا بوجودهم في هذا اللقاء. أيها السادة والسيدات، ندرك يقيناً أن أستراليا تحلق في عالم التقدم بأجنحة كثيرة ومتنوعة، وبرامج سياسية واقتصادية واجتماعية، وكلها تبدأ من الإبداع السياسي للأحزاب المختلفة، وأهمها بإطلاق حزب العمال وحزب الأحرار. وجميل أيها السادة أن يكون بين الأحزاب السياسية تحديات تصب كلها في نهضة الوطن، وترتبط بالرغبة الصادقة في خدمة المواطن وحماية حقوقه وحريته وتوفير احتياجاته. وجميل أيضاً أن يكون لثقة المواطن وصوته كل هذا الثمن العظيم. وجميل أن يصل مستوى الوعي الشعبي للقدرة على المساءلة ودقة الاختيار في نوابه لهذا المستوى. والأجمل أن يصل مستوى السعي السياسي لتحقيق آمال وطننا والحرص على مصلحة المواطن لتحقيق الوعود المأمولة في الوظائف والصحة والتعليم. وإني ومن موقعي هذا أهيب بكم أن تستمعوا جميعاً وباهتمام لما يقال في هذا اللقاء، لتكونوا رؤيتكم بدقة عن نوابكم الذين يتولون مسؤولية الوطن في هذه الدورة القادمة، وأن ننقل كرواد وقادة بكل الطرق وبأمانة وبطريق صحيح عملية التصويت في الانتخابات، وأن نبرز الدور العظيم لهذا الواجب الوطني الكبير. ونحن كمواطنين استرال أولاً، وكجالية إسلامية ثانياً، نحب أن نرى وطننا استراليا في مقدمة بلاد العالم الأول، كما نتمنى ونحرص أن تظل دولتنا في مقدمة الريادة للعالم الحر، وأن تبقى وتستمر واحة للأمن والحرية والاستقرار. أهلاً بكم في هذا اللقاء، عمالاً من أجل استراليا وأحراراً يرفعون رايتها، وعليكم سلام الله ورحمته.
Assalamu alaikum. It gives me great pleasure to personally, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Australian National Imams Council, federal and local, and on behalf of the 500,000 strong Australian Muslim community, to welcome you all to this discussion forum. I start by conveying my thanks and appreciation to the honourable ministers, ambassadors and members of parliament, especially to those who've had to travel from Canberra and Melbourne, to be able to join us in our meeting and to contribute to its success. I would also like to thank our dear respected guests, our brothers and sisters, for attending this forum. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that Australia is at the forefront of many fronts, political, economic and social, all of them starting from an innovative political grounding by the different parties in power, the most important of which are Labour and Liberal. It is excellent to see that between those parties there is a competition to resolve the challenges affecting us while connected with a genuine zeal to serve and safeguard the country and its individuals in their rights, freedoms and needs. It is heartening to see that the trust of every citizen has in the government and in its actors to deliver on their responsibilities. It is inspiring to see that the public has enough awareness of the political dynamic to discern and hold accountable their representatives accordingly, and more so seeing that the political will is aligned with the higher interests of the nation's future in relation to employment, health, education, and other critical issues. In my capacity as the Mufti of Australia, I call upon you all of you here today, to heed well what is being discussed during this meeting so that you can develop a clear insight into your representatives, those who are going to manage the affairs of this country in the next term. We have to convey, however we can, and to all those in our circles of influence, the importance of carrying out this national duty and responsibility carefully and correctly so as not to lose our voices. As Australians first and as Muslims, part of the Muslim community in Australia, we want to see our nation at the forefront of the world. We hope and work towards a free and fair country that is an oasis of safety and security. I welcome you all again to this forum where we will work together as citizens for our country. And may the peace and blessings of God be upon you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Thank you, Abdul Nasser. As I've mentioned, we are privileged today to have a diverse and rich number of politicians, including ministers, MPs, and candidates for the coming election. Please allow me to introduce our guests, and I would kindly ask each one of them to stand when he hears his name so that the whole audience could know. Starting by Senator the Honourable Bob Carr, Australia's Minister of Foreign Affairs since 2012. Senator Bob Carr also holds a record as being the longest continuous serving Premier of New South Wales. Our next guest is the Honourable Jason Clare, Minister for Justice, Minister for Home Affairs, and Labour Member for Blaxland. Our next guest is the Honourable Kevin Andrews. Mr. Andrews is the Shadow Minister for Families, Housing and Human Services and has served as a Minister in 3 portfolios from 2001 to 2007. Our next guest is Mr. Paul Fletcher, Liberal Member for Bradfield. And our next guest is the Honourable Tony Burke. Tony Burke? Okay, Vice President of the Executive Council and Minister for the Arts, Minister for Immigration, Multicultural Affairs and Citizenship. The Honourable Ed Hussey, MP. I think I've seen him here, Ed. Okay, so running a little late. Yeah, he is a parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister and also Parliamentary Secretary for Broadband, Member for Chifley. The Honourable John Murphy, Member for Reed, New South Wales. Miss Julie Owens. Miss Julie Owens is Member for Parramatta, New South Wales. I think she is also running late. Mr. Dali Mulham. Mr. Dali Mulham is a Member for Banks, New South Wales. And Mr. Anthony Khoury, one of the very first ones to arrive. Mr. Anthony Khoury is a candidate for Blaxland. And Mr. Greg Laundy. Mr. Greg Laundy is also a candidate for Reed. Also joining us today is Mr. Shaukat Musliman, who is a member of New South Wales Legislative Council. Thank you. Please give a round of applause to all our guests once again. Thank you. The opening remarks of tonight's forum will be delivered by Senator Carr. Senator Carr, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Your Eminence the Grand Mufti, distinguished community leaders, parliamentary colleagues, ambassadors from Canberra, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honour to be here. And to cut to the chase, to say straight away and straight off, you've asked us, I support Palestine and I vote. You put that out on all the tables. Well, we in the Labor Party support Palestine and we voted in the United Nations. The Liberal Party says it will reverse that voting pattern. Julia Gillard said that, Julie Bishop said that to our ambassador to the United Nations, to be prepared to change the voting pattern of Australia should the Abbott government, should Abbott become the government. So you've got a clear choice. Australia proudly admitted Palestine to enhanced status in the General Assembly. Australia swings against that if Tony Abbott becomes Prime Minister. Second, settlements on the West Bank that are making a Palestinian state harder and harder to achieve by the day. 500,000 settlers now living on the West Bank. Australia, under this Labor government, says all settlements are illegal. They're all illegal. Under international law, they are all illegal. The Geneva Convention and other sources say they are illegal, and we and the rest of the world say they're illegal. The coalition says that if they become the government, they will remove that and they will cease to criticise Israeli settlement activity on the West Bank. So Australia would change its position, change its stance. Clear choice here. Under Labor, all settlement activity is illegal. It makes a Middle East solution, a comprehensive peace and a secure Israel and a Palestinian state impossible to get. We say clearly, clear voice, all settlement activity is illegal. We have a record of giving aid. The third thing, we give aid, $400 million over 4 years to the Palestinian Authority, and aid to starving people in Gaza. I have been subjected in the Senate to non-stop criticism from Senator Helen Kroger, a Liberal senator from Victoria, because we give that aid, including seedlings, so that people in Gaza can plant vegetable patches and have food security, delivered through World Vision. Delivered through World Vision. I was told by the Liberal Party that that aid is going to terrorist groups. In fact, the Gaza organisation that runs that aid program is recognised by Israel, registered in Israel, and its leadership can drive around Israel. Helen Kroger, Liberal Party Victoria, has accused us of aiding terrorists because through Tim Costello, the Reverend Tim Costello and his organisation World Vision, we give seedlings so that Palestinian families can plant vegetable patches in Gaza, all on the parliamentary record. I've been to Myanmar with one mission, my second visit to Myanmar, one vision, to make representations for 800,000 people in Rakhine province, and I met their leadership. They're being subject to appalling discrimination. I raised their discrimination not only with the President, but with Aung San Suu Kyi, with other ministers in that government. I will never cease to campaign for the Rohingya. Syria and Egypt, you know our position. Here's what the Liberal Party thinks and says. Scott Morrison, Shadow Minister for Immigration, urged the Shadow Cabinet to capitalise on the electorate's growing concerns about Muslim immigration, Muslims in Australia, and the inability of Muslim migrants to integrate. But after Mr Morrison's comments this week on the cost of asylum seeker funerals, the role in the controversial decision, etc., this came out in the media as having happened at a Shadow Cabinet debate. On the record, Parliamentary Secretary to Tony Abbott, Corey Bernardi, says, quote, "Islam is the problem," unquote. Now, you can't come here to a friendly, generous Islamic gathering and pretend you don't say the things you say and pretend you don't adopt the policies you adopt. I speak for a government that stands for multiculturalism and fiercely opposes racial discrimination. I stand here for a government that instructed its ambassador in the United Nations not to oppose enhanced Palestinian status in the General Assembly, and the Liberal Party says it would reverse that pattern of voting and has told our diplomats to prepare for that. I stand proudly for giving aid through reputable organisations to people in Gaza and for sustaining the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, which I have visited and with whom I work. I'm proud that we say, as the rest of the world says, all settlement activity is illegal, and I'd be embarrassed for Australia should there be a change of government and that policy get reversed. These are the things we stand for. These are the things we've not promised to do. These are the things, my friends, that we have done, but these are the things that get reversed if there's a change of government, because that's how democracy works. I want you to think carefully about these things as I leave the debate in capable hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bob. I would like now to go to the second half of our forum tonight, which is the discussion, and would like to hand over to my colleague Mukhlis so that he can call upon the members who will be conducting the debate to start tonight's debate with a couple of, or few actually, issues that are very important to the Muslim community. I would like to call upon Honourable Jason Clare to the stand, please. Honourable Kevin Andrew, please. And Mr. Craig Blondy, please, to the stand. And Mukhlis, who is taking over Senator Carr, please?
Well, we're waiting for Tony Burke, and as soon as Tony Burke joins us, he will take his seat.
Okay, wonderful. So it's all yours. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Samir, for the wonderful introductions, and thank you our guests for being with us, and thank you, Your Eminence, the Grand Mufti, for hosting this very important event. And of course, thank you for all the Imams that have taken out of your time to be here with us. When we did our consultation process in the Muslim community, there were 6 issues that were of great concern and great importance. And the purpose of today's forum is to provide both parties with the opportunity within 3 minutes, to actually respond to those issues in terms of their position as far as those issues are concerned and what they are planning to do about them if they become the government. So without further ado, I'll start with the first point of great concern, and of course it relates to the perception of discrimination, marginalization of the Muslim community, and the facts out of research from Monash University says that quarter of what being reported in media about Islam is of negative nature. That's a big percentage. Now, there are anti-religious vilification laws in Queensland, in Victoria, and in Tasmania. However, the other states and the federal government have failed to enact similar religious vilification and vilification laws. So, who would you like to start? Shall we start? Kick off. Yes.
Thank you, Mukhlis. And you're going to do very well tonight if you can keep politicians to speak for less than 3 minutes. Thank you for inviting all of us here. This is a great example of democracy in action and the Islamic community here in Western Sydney coming of age. I think it's a fantastic event, and thank you for inviting me. Your Eminence, in particular, I'd like to pay a very special tribute to you and your leadership in convening this meeting, as well as the National Council of Imams, ambassadors and many friends. I look across the room and I see many old friends. This is an important issue. Mukhlis, you've spoken to me about this before. We have discrimination laws for age, for sex, for disability. This is an area where it doesn't exist at the moment. We've been having a debate about this, in a sense, in Parliament over the last 12 months because the government is trying to take 5 pieces of discrimination legislation and create one single act, to consolidate it into one. That doesn't at the moment cover the issue which is of such great concern here in the room, which is about religious discrimination, but it does go to religious discrimination on the grounds of work or work-related areas. Now, this is an area where submissions from the community said that we do need reform in this area and we do need religious discrimination legislation. The Parliament had a committee. It's come up with a set of recommendations, and the Attorney-General has asked the Attorney-General's Department to look at the recommendations that came from that committee, as well as the recommendations that came from the community, and then we'll report back to the Attorney-General over the course of the next 6 months. The Labor Party has an open mind about this. We haven't ruled anything in or out. We want to seek the further advice of the community as well as the Department. One area where there is a distinct difference between the Labor Party and the Liberal Party is on the issue of Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act. Now, this is the section of the Racial Discrimination Act which bans hate speech or hateful speech. It's the section that says it's against the law to say things that are hateful on the grounds of someone's religion or their ethnic origin or the colour of their skin. And the Liberal Party have said that if they form government that they would remove that section from the Race Discrimination Act. The Labor Party does not support that. That is going backwards, not forwards. If we are elected to government on the 7th of September, that provision, which bans hateful speech in the Racial Discrimination Act, will stay. If the Liberal Party is elected government, then they have said that they will remove Section 18C from the Racial Discrimination Act. That is and that is a bad thing. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, I'll make a sign 30 seconds before you, and please move.
Thank you very much. And at the outset, may I pay my respects to His Eminence the Grand Mufti and to Excellencies here tonight, and indeed to all the leaders of the Islamic community, particularly here in Sydney. It's been a great pleasure and honour to come up from Melbourne to participate in this function this evening. Can I say at the outset that We are opposed to discrimination. And if you look at the history of the Liberal Party, it was the Menzies government that signed the Refugee Convention. It was the Holt Liberal government that entered the White Australia policy. It was the Fraser government that opened the doors to large-scale immigration to Australia, and indeed it was the Howard government that realised that you can increase immigration numbers from all over the world if the community is behind that, and we did that in government. So I think our record stands in terms of saying that we are a welcoming country and a party in government that has been welcoming. The great thing about Australia is our ability to balance things which in many other countries around the world have proven impossible. And those two things are the diversity of the people who come from all over the world to make Australia home, from different religions and different cultural backgrounds and different language groups, and etc. We've balanced that with a sense of what I would call integration of being Australians. And it's that balance which puts us in the forefront of the world as one of the democratic nations. Now, the question of Section 18C is also a technical legal question about where balance of proof actually lies. We believe that there should not be discrimination in this country as to getting the technical aspects of that right, because the last thing you want to do is to have a piece of legislation which ends up making martyrs of people and has the reverse consequence so far as the community is concerned.
Good evening, Grand Mufti and National Council, everybody. Look, I don't think you need laws. I think you need politicians that are prepared to stand up for you. You elect people that understand your faith. You need leaders in this country. Leaders that don't talk political talk, that understand that you love God, you love your family, you are raising your children centred in faith. You're just like me and everyone else from other religions. But we need to be able to stand up publicly and say it. So it's one thing to say we need laws. We don't need that. That's fair and just. You should have representatives that stand up and fight for you on your behalf and listen to you. That's how I think we handle this problem. Ignorance creates fear, and I think we need to work together. I see Ahmed Keskin over there, Affinity Intercultural. Bodies like his and interfaith dialogue is what we need. That's what I believe we need.
Muslim community issue, and it relates to the need for some affirmative action to help the Muslim community better integrate within the wider Australian community. Let me give you some facts. The unemployment rate among Muslim males in Australia are double the average unemployment rate. The average is nearly 5. In some Muslim areas, it is up to 16% unemployment. 60% of Muslims earn less than $400 per week, while that percentage is only 40%. So there is 50% increase in poverty. Females suffer particularly. Muslim females suffer particularly. And the reason is because employers are hesitant to hire women wearing the hijab. So we have an issue here. And I'm very keen to, I'll start with the Liberal to see your views on this affirmative proposal.
Can I make 3 points? The first thing is, if we want to create jobs in Australia for whoever, people of an Islamic faith or people of a different faith or no faith, then we have to have a strong economy. If we don't have a strong economy, we do not create jobs. And can I remind you that in the government of which I was a minister, we had virtually full employment in Australia. And that's what we've got to achieve again. Secondly, we've got to have good education. And one of the things that we did in the Howard government was to remove Labor's so-called new schools policy, which meant no new schools. And the expansion of schools such as the Islamic colleges has largely been a product of removing that policy, so you can have schools out there which teach not only good education in a secular sense, but from the faith perspective as well. And thirdly, we have to ensure that we have opportunities not just for young people to go to university, but be able to get a skill, be able to get a trade. And that's why our announcement just in the last week of providing a HEC-style loan for apprentices of $20,000 is something which has been long overdue and something which we believe will help young people in that regard.
I think we need to have a serious look. People are telling me in Auburn and Lidcombe that we need to look at how we teach English as a second language. If we want to get people working, we need to teach them English. And if we want to get females in particular to find work, we need to help them and assist them to get driver's licences. Something as practical as that. The Afghani community in Auburn are piloting a scheme right now, Sayed Karimi. It's a wonderful scheme, helping Afghani women to learn to drive. And the unintended consequence of that is remarkable. Women that can't drive can't take their kids to and from school. There are young Afghani kids that are hanging around train stations and going astray. I have an Afghani solicitor in Parramatta. The last 5 drive-by shootings, arrestings, have been of Afghani youth. And the reason is that around those train stations, outlaw motorcycle gangs are recruiting these young kids and their mothers don't know where they are. This is a practical example of how something as simple as helping Afghani, Iraqi, Muslim women to learn to drive will stop something as sinister as gun crime. This is real, it's on the streets. There are great youth programs in Auburn. I know Khalid is on the Islamic Council. His sister Amima and her youth group are doing some fantastic things with our youth. We need to get them into work with them, teach them English, not have them in a position where youth unemployment in Reid is not 16%, it's 19.4% where we sit today. And that is a disgrace and we need to do more about it.
I've only just got here. Tony Burke, Assalamu alaikum, good evening. Two things that I think are overarching for the issue that's in front of us now. The first principle that I think we have to get clear is if we look at opportunity for Islamic youth purely through the lens of let's make sure Islamic youth gets better training, then we are only dealing with half the equation, because the non-Islamic community needs better training too. And I think we need to be honest about that. I remember, as you would remember, when late at night the police asked someone to move on who was sitting chatting to someone in Punchbowl. It only hit the news because it was Hazem El Masri. And it's important that we don't come up here as politicians and pretend that it's all about providing better training for young Muslims. Because the truth is, there are two sides to this coin and both sides need to be addressed. And words and the way words are spoken and the leadership that is provided by politicians on this matters. I was horrified over the last week when I heard somebody claim that because refugees were going to Papua New Guinea, that a new Taliban would be established in Papua New Guinea because the refugees were Muslims. I was appalled when I heard about the invitations that have been provided to people who would come here and preach anti-Islamic hate. But it is no accident that each of the two people I've just referred to are Liberal Party senators. One Senator Boyce, the other Senator Bernardi. And I just think we have to be honest here that you can't for 2.5 years through the mainstream media show that sort of prejudice and then turn up a week and a half before an election to a big dinner and say, hey, we're right behind you and here's how we're going to train all the young Islamic youth. I've seen it for too long. And I do think we have to be honest, because as you know, I live and work, as does Jason, side by side with each of you. And there are things that need to be done in providing better training. I don't think you better get a better example than Punchbowl Boys High and what Jihad Deeb is doing there as principal in making sure opportunity is real. I think what's happening finally with nursing home services, so that as people age, they can actually be cared for by people who will speak the language of their childhood and share with them their culturally appropriate care. These things are now happening and they matter. But we need to acknowledge that it's not simply a case of all the initiative having to come from one part of the community and not both. You play your role and you are playing your role, and I have a belief that we have to play ours too.
Okay, the next point of great concern and that brings out a lot of emotions is the question of Palestine. Who's for Palestine here, guys? Yeah? Give us a round of clap if you are for Palestine. Guys, I have here a mountain of cards which says I support Palestine and I vote. I've got a mountain. Now the reason I didn't bring the rest of the cards is because you wouldn't be able to see me if I put them all here. They would go that high. These are the cards that are just from Sydney. They cover 24 electoral seats out of the 24 in the greater Sydney metropolitan area. This is how important this issue to all Muslims from across all denominations, across all sects. The issue, as I mentioned, of Palestine, particularly East Jerusalem, is something that unites us all, and we probably have seen that from the round of applause we've heard. In the United Nations Security Council, Senator Carr explained the Labour position, and I am, and we are all keen to understand what will be the future progress of Labour and what will be the future position of the Liberal Party. Senator Carr mentioned, he stole my magic. Senator Carr mentioned that as far as ALP is concerned, all settlements are illegal. The USA considers all settlements illegitimate. The UK considers all settlements being illegal. They steal the basic land that the Palestinians wish to establish their independent state on. Now, I need to throw this subject to you both, and last time we've had the Liberals starting, so maybe I'll have Tony talk to us about the position and most importantly, what will be next as far as this emotional issue is concerned.
I don't think there was anything that brought the issue home to me the way it did when I was Minister for Water, and seeing communities that were downstream from settlements and what had happened to the quality of their water for drinking purposes and what had happened to the quality of their water for agricultural purposes. We are talking about Palestinian land, and the argument about the settlements that they were somehow some sort of security measure got to the point of absolute ridiculousness when settlements were being placed between Bethlehem and Ramallah. It was being done for one reason and one reason only, as far as I could see, and that was to permanently prevent the establishment of a state of Palestine. I don't see how you can support there being an independent state of Palestine and support the settlements. I just don't see how the two can go together. For a long time, I've stood in front of you and said that I supported, as is Jason, that I supported there being a two-state solution, supported there being a state of Palestine, and didn't have a lot to show for it. Finally, I was proud when Labor was able to direct, a Labor government was able to direct our ambassador to the General Assembly and say that we would not put up our hand against Palestinian representation at the UN. I'm very proud that we were able to do that, but you're right, the question then becomes what next? And in terms of aid, we need to make sure that we continue to have a very real priority and understanding of the needs of the Palestinian people, both within Palestine and those who have fled to other areas. In terms of the refugee program, I am very mindful that some of the Palestinians who are now fleeing Syria are refugees for the 5th or 6th time as they have moved from country to country. And in terms of making sure that the next stages of our humanitarian program are done appropriately, I've already signed off the brief before we went into caretaker to make sure that Palestinians caught up in that conflict were among the people who Australia was going to provide a level of obligation to.
Thank you. I've been to Ramallah. I've had conversations and discussions with members of the Palestinian Authority, and I, like the members of the coalition, recognise the deeply seated aspirations of the Palestinian people. The reality is that I think everybody in Australia supports the two-state peace settlement. The great difficulty is, how is that achieved? And if that could be achieved easily, we wouldn't be sitting here discussing it tonight. Now, it's easy enough, I suppose, for politicians half a world away to, in the context of a forthcoming election campaign, to say, I've got the solution, or if we just do this, we'll solve it. I'm not going to pretend that to you tonight, because that's simply fanciful, it's unreal. The coalition in government, if we're elected on September 7, will continue to support the two-state peace settlement. We will do whatever we can from this distance to achieve that. We recognise that in the end, it has to be an agreement between the Palestinians and the Israelis, otherwise it won't work. But the world can play a constructive role in trying to bring about that settlement, and we would do that if we're in government.
The other issue that is of not just concern, it is actually of positive aspiration, is in how we as a Muslim community with outstanding relationships and outreach to our own countries in terms of cultural, trade, business, etc. How is the next Australian government going to leverage this huge potential to actually improve the bilateral and the economic and trade relationships between Australia and those 54 Muslim countries? Let me give you some facts. Australia's trade with the Muslim world currently stands at $50 billion. $50 billion. That's just around 12% of total Australia trade. And that's with 1/3 of the world. So 1/3 of the world gets 12%. Now, out of that 50 billion, by the way, Israel gets 800 million, 0.8 of a billion. So just to keep things in context. The question for us is, if you are successful in the next government, how are we going to utilize the inherent strength in Australia to double that 50 billion? What are we going to do to make that 50 billion trade 100 billion? And I'll start with...
It's my turn. Can I say two things in response? The first, as you would all be aware, is we talk almost incessantly about Australia's place in Asia and our trade with Asia. And that usually is code for talking about China and North Asia. But actually, much closer to Australia, there is the real opportunity for us, and those nations are Islamic nations. So developing trade with Indonesia, developing trade with Malaysia, developing trade with a series of other countries, which is what we are on about, is actually in a practical way answering the question that's been posed. But secondly, we have to make that people to people. Trade is not just understanding the laws, the trade laws of another country. Trade is about rapport between people and building relationships. Let me give an example of that. The establishment of the Australian-Lebanon Chamber of Commerce. 3 of the patrons of that are Julie Bishop, Warren Truss and Philip Ruddock. And government can give leadership to that sort of relationship between not just countries but people, and upon which we can then build trade because we build understanding between peoples. So in our immediate area, which is the concentration in most of the talk about trade, then that is a real opportunity for us to build the very thing that you're talking about tonight.
I just wanted to add that it's also not enough just to understand there are language barriers to us trading. We need to understand the cultural barriers. So one of the plans that I'm particularly proud to be a part of and will be pushing to expand, if you like, is two-way student exchange, because the leaders of this country and the 57 countries you refer to are at school at the moment, and we need to educate them and exchange with them on how both business is done in that area of the world and how it is done here, so that they can play a major role in countries of the future and facilitate trade. So the Colombo Plan and the expansion of that is something that, if I were lucky enough to be elected the member of Reed, I would be pushing very heavily for, including the 57 countries that you mentioned.
I'm going to do something that surprises you now, and I'm going to agree with most of what Kevin and Craig said. You want the microphone back now, do you? Kevin talked about people-to-people relations, and he's right, that's the key. Here's a statistic that will shock you. 1% of our trade is with the Arab-speaking world. We talk a lot about China, we talk a lot about Asia, and with good reason, and one of the great advantages that we have when we look to Asia is our Asian diaspora, the big Asian community that we have here. Now, the key to expanding trade into the Arab world is our Arab-speaking community. That's why the Australian Arab Business Network is so important. I don't think Hassan is here tonight. But yes, of course, they deserve a round of applause. The great work that the network is doing is part of the key here. Building the people-to-people links. And I know the team of the network, I'm a member of the network, are planning the first trade mission next year in April 2014 to Morocco, and then one year after year after year. Now, regardless of who wins the next election, I think the next Trade Minister of Australia needs to lead a delegation to the Middle East, to the Arab world, to help businesses based here in Australia to do business with the Middle East, to do business with the Arab world. So that's something that I will do, irrespective of what the outcome of the election is, because it'll be good for business in our local area. We talked about education a moment ago. There's a bit of unfinished business there. I just want to mention one more thing that's important. Muklas mentioned some statistics. In southwest Sydney, if you speak English very well, your unemployment rate is likely to be 5%. If you don't speak English very well at all, your unemployment rate is likely to be 18%. If you can't speak English at all, it's 25%. So tackling this, a key part of it is the English language skills that we give our community, particularly new people that come to Australia. It's the key to success in Australia. And so is education. Most of the jobs that are going to be created in Australia over the next 10 and 20 years will require us to finish school and then go on to TAFE or to university. The days where you could finish in year 10 and get a job are fast disappearing. And here in Western Sydney, the percentage of young people that finish school is much lower than it is, say, in Mosman or the eastern suburbs. Now, we've got to fix that, or we're just going to entrench the disadvantage that already exists here in Western Sydney. which is why what you sometimes hear referred to as Gonski is so important. Extra funding, extra resources to help young people that might be falling behind at school. Now, that's extra money for our schools that this government is going to put in if it's re-elected. If we're not re-elected, if the Liberal Party win the next election, then 2/3 of that money will be lost, and that will be a big problem for our schools. We need extra resources if we're going to help our young kids to finish school, go on to TAFE or university, and get the jobs that are going to lead to the exports to the Arab world.
Now, we move to the next very emotional concern, and that is mosques and schools. This community, guys, they have to go through incredible hurdles, incredible effort, legal action to build mosques. Now, guys in here, who is for moderate and peaceful Islam? A big clap. Muslim or Islam is a religion of moderation. If we fail to allow mosques, proper accredited mosques, with proper accredited imams, like the imams we have here, if we fail to do that, then the moderate voice of Islam, the moderate message of Islam will never be heard. What we will have is garage mosques where imams who are not qualified are preaching the extremism and the extremist message of and misinterpretation of Islam. This point, having mosques and schools above ground in all big areas, having 10 similar mosques to the one we have in Auburn and Lakemba, is actually for the safety and is for the benefit of Australia as much as it is for the benefit of the Muslim community. And I'm very keen to understand what are the two parties' position in facilitating this process. What are we going to do to push hard? How hard are you going to push to make life easy for us?
Well, this is pretty simple as far as I'm concerned. We are a free country, and a key tenet of being a free country is freedom of religion. And that means that you need the places of worship to be able to practice your religion. In the case of the Muslim community, that's mosques. Christian community, that's churches. It seems to me to be very straightforward. A key part of this is obviously working, people that are working to establish a new mosque, working with their local councils. But it's not just mosques, because a community needs more than just a place of worship. Mukhlis, you mentioned schools, very important, very important. But as we get older, aged care is becoming a central issue. At the moment in Australia, there is no Muslim aged care centre. But with the $10 million that Tony and I lobbied the government to get, we're going to build the first Muslim aged care centre in Lakemba, just behind Lakemba Mosque. When you're getting older, especially if English is not your first language, you tend to forget English and go back to your mother tongue. And if you're in an aged care centre, you want doctors and nurses who can cater to your special needs, can speak to you in Arabic, can give you the food that you love and enjoy, and allow you to practice your religion. And you can't do that at the moment in Australia. This is a story related not to the Arabic-speaking community, but to the Vietnamese, but the story rings true. A Vietnamese man went to an aged care centre and he was given a sandwich for dinner. And his daughter said he's never had a sandwich before in his life. He needs Asian food. And so they gave him a bowl of boiled white rice. And that told me that they did not get it, and you need specialised aged care services. I believe that. Tony believes that. That's why we've fought so hard to provide the $10 million to build that centre, and that'll be part of a precinct around Lakemba Mosque, providing a place of worship, the recreation centre, the aged care centre, and, over time, a school there as well, and that's a great thing.
Can I say there must be an outbreak of bipartisanship tonight? because can I commit to that $10 million on behalf of the coalition if we're elected as well? So whoever is elected to be the Government of Australia on the 7th of September, you will get the $10 million to build the aged care centre. And that's important for all the reasons which Jason outlined. Can I just come back to the question though, which was about freedom of religion? Freedom of religion is one of the tenets of the democratic system in Australia. You may recall in the citizenship booklet, it sets out what are the rights and responsibilities of a citizen of Australia. And one of the things which is starkly stated there is about freedom of religion. And freedom of religion must mean, if it's to mean anything, the freedom to be able to practice your religion. Religion is not just a private spiritual exercise. That may be part of it, but it also involves the public manifestation of that practice of religion. That's a fundamental tenet of the Liberal and National parties, and we will defend it.
It's not enough just to have school and road infrastructure. You need spiritual infrastructure, and your religion of Islam, that is mosques. And whilst Jason is right, this is a council issue. Your federal local member of parliament should be someone you know, should be someone, if you have issues with this, you can talk to, and that they can work hard with you and lobby council. And I'm pleased to say in our Auburn area that there's a particular Islamic community there that was having some issues with the development they were proposing, and it looks like working with the councillors there that we will come to a great result. And that is the job that your federal local member of parliament should do, no matter what side they're on.
Okay, now you've already heard a lot. And you've already heard a lot. There are some question forms on your tables. So can you see them? Can you see the question forms? Yeah? There are question forms. If you have got any questions, please write your name, write who do you want the question to be addressed to, what is the question, and the MC and others will help pick them up. If you could just, somebody, yeah, Samir, if you could help. So that will happen while we are asking the last question. So if you've got any questions, please fill the form, hand it to Samir, and Samir will pick the 3 or 4 questions that we have time to ask. The last point, we've heard a lot of views and comments about the strategy. What are the two parties' strategies and views in regard to our 6 issues? Now, what comes and what underpins strategy is structure. We say if we fail to plan, that is planning to fail. So in order not to fail in achieving those aspirations, I'm very keen to understand from both parties the structure they propose to make sure that those aspirations move from being a dream to being a reality. We are proposing an advisory board. We are proposing a steering committee that reports directly to the Prime Minister office or one of the key ministers. An advisory board that works closely with the community to prioritize the initiatives that comes out of each of those issues and then oversees their fulfillment and oversees their delivery. So I'm very keen to understand what sort of structure are you proposing to actually make this dream a reality? And we'll start with...
Last time we were in government, you may recall that we established a Muslim community reference group, and that worked quite well. And that is an approach which I think we should consider about how we do these things in the future. Craig might want to add some things about the importance of local representation, but can I say from the perspective of a shadow cabinet minister that if I lose the shadow part of the title in a week or so's time, then I'm happy to come back here and to meet with the community on as many times as you would like me to do that, so that there is that direct input.
Thanks, Kevin. The Super Advisory Committee, I think that was the term in the question, Super Advisory. Look, the role, once again, of a local Member of Parliament is you have a local advisory committee, and over the last 18 months, I've been amazed to build a network, and many of the people in this room I know. Your Member of Parliament should be accessible, but more important, I think he should understand that, and I know that I don't have the answers. The answers to your issues sit out there. You need to be able to talk to your Member of Parliament. They need to be able to listen, understand what it is you want them to fight for. You are a local advisory committee, and the access you have is how we learn and how we go to Canberra and fight on your behalf. Whether you formalise that is something that will happen, quite frankly, above my pay grade. But that doesn't take away the job of a local Member of Parliament dealing with local people, listening to what they want and going to Canberra and fighting to deliver on their behalf.
I do have to take some exception from what Kevin Andrews has said about the alleged success of John Howard's advisory committee. I think there are two concepts here. One, whether you form a committee, and two, whether it's listened to. And a lot of people went through a roller coaster of expectations being high when the committee was formed and being dashed as its advice continued to be ignored. We have set up a number of committees throughout immigration. The way we've done it is to do it region by region. So we have a Middle Eastern committee, we have separate Asian committees, and they're done across religion. There's different structures you can have, but ultimately I think it's true in the question you do need to have some community structure around it. But whatever structure you have, the key will be, do you actually have the people listening at the other end who have a genuine belief in the role of this community within Australia? And I look around the room, I see John Murphy, I see Ed Husick, I see Joe Sinclair, and I know the work that we've been doing, be it with respect to nursing homes, be it with respect to leading community debates, be it with respect to sometimes having to oppose some of the awful things that have been said by other members of Parliament, and none of them have been Labor. And I think the leadership and the values of the people receiving the advice of the committee is actually what makes the difference, because you can't just believe it in 10 days leading up to the election.
Well, we basically come now to the end of the forum, the discussion part of the forum, and we are amazingly on time. We are amazingly on time. So what I would like to do, like we've had the opening remarks from Senator Carr, I would like to give Kevin Andrews the opportunity for the closing remarks, and then we will go into questions and answers, and we'll have dinner served at 9:15. So, please.
I can do it from here if you like, yes. Can I say it's a great honour to be here tonight. When I was asked, I changed my program so that I could fly up here this evening to be with the Islamic community here in Western Sydney, and I will leave you in Craig and Paul Fletcher's good hands, because I have to fly back on the last plane tonight because I've got an early morning commitment in Melbourne. But I sincerely mean it when I say that it is a great honour to be here tonight and to represent the coalition. We learn from the past. None of us are perfect. No government is perfect. But you can look at some of the things that governments have done in the past as an indication of their inclinations in the future. The fact that as a party over a long period of time, we have worked towards a more tolerant, a country in which people don't discriminate against each other, something which Tony Abbott himself, when he came out here during Ramadan, spoke about. That's something which we are committed to. There are many problems out there, ranging from the local level that we're talking about tonight, about how our kids get the education and the employment and the training that they need, right through to the global issues about what's happening in the Middle East, in Syria, in Palestine and elsewhere around the world. None of us have the perceived wisdom to simply solve many of those issues. The way in which we will solve them is by working together, learning from what mistakes we've made in the past, and we make them and all governments make them, but being prepared to work together, to listen to each other, to come together as a community like we're doing tonight. And can I say to you once again that if we are honoured enough to be elected in about 10 days' time, then I don't want this to be the first occasion and the last occasion that I come to Western Sydney as a senior member of the government, but to be something which is a regular occurrence, so we can have these conversations in an ongoing way, and that way together we can all work for the betterment of your community, of our communities generally, and for this nation of which we are so proud. That is my commitment to you tonight.
Now, one of the first questions we have from the floor, and it is to both sides of the debate, is the question of burial sites. When Muslims came to this country, we were all young men. We didn't have a single white hair on our heads. Now I've even lost my own hair. And what is happening is that one of the biggest concerns here is the burial places. And the question here is, what is the government doing? What's the Commonwealth government doing to free up Commonwealth land and allocate it to the right parties? Because there are two questions here: freeing enough land and making sure it goes to the right people. What's the thought of that?
Look, burial lands are a state government issue, and I'm proud to say, as a third-generation member of this community, they come under the Department of Primary Industry, and the minister responsible at the state level is Katrina Hodgkinson. And I'm very proud to say that there was a particular local issue at Rookwood Cemetery, and under the hard work, we can't claim any credit for this because it's a state issue, but under the hard work of Katrina Hodgkinson and Barry O'Farrell, that was resolved. There was a road issue, council worked together with the state government, and there has been a dramatic expansion in the burial site at Rookwood Cemetery. That's how government, be it state and council, should work together to solve these issues.
I'll be brief. Craig is right. Barry O'Farrell deserves credit. He did the right thing here and helped to resolve this issue. Just as I said on the issue of mosques and having a place of worship, you need places to bury your loved ones. And this is a major problem for our community. Barry O'Farrell has taken important steps to make sure that there are burial sites, but there's a lot more to do. There is a lot more work to do here, and that involves all of us working together closely on this issue at a state level as well as local government, but having leaders in the community working closely with political leaders, members of parliament, is an important step in making sure that we address this issue, because it's not going to go away. We've made some important inroads over the course of the last few years, but there's more work to do there.
The second question is relating to Alan Jones. He's driving us nuts, this guy. How are we going to put an end to... I mean, we're for freedom of speech. I think this is the key question. He said, we are for freedom of speech, but there is a difference between freedom of speech and incitement and vilification. And we're getting a lot of that. And I mentioned 25% of media on Islam is negative. How are we going to stop this once and for all? This was for the Liberal.
I suspect every member of this panel who's a member of Parliament has been severely criticised by Alan Jones on occasions. I certainly have. It's not nice when it happens, but that's part of the rough and tumble, I suppose, of the political system in which we live. I think what's important, though, is that you continue to stand up for those values which you believe are important. And they're values which we all believe are important. Sometimes people go a bit overboard in a democratic country like Australia. It doesn't necessarily excuse it, but that's part, as I said, of the rough and tumble. I think your respectful, your dignified way in which you act, that you live, that you represent family values and the like, in the end, that's what comes through. And I would encourage you to continue to do that. And, you know, now and again, we all have to cop a bit of flack from people that we prefer. They didn't give us a bit of flack. And being a politician, we cop a bit more than probably most people do. But in a sense, having a thick skin, putting up with it, not responding in kind, and showing really what your community is all about, which is that peacefulness that was spoken about earlier. I think that's what's important in the end, and that's what will win through.
The other question relates to refugees. Now, somehow we in the Muslim world have more than our fair share of troubles at this stage. We're going through a major transformation of our people, our systems, etc. And that naturally leads to a lot of refugees. There are people here who are asking about Myanmar refugees. They're asking about Palestinian refugees for the 5th time, refugees from Iraq, refugees from Syria. How are you helping those, or how are you intending to help those in both danger and in need of great help? That's for the Labour Party.
Thanks very much. This room is full of people who have relatives back at home facing danger in different ways. And one of the things that I've been determined about in my role as Immigration Minister, and while there's been some criticism for me taking what some would describe as a hard line, I don't just want to stop people from drowning on the way here for those who have come by boat. I want to be able to use the opportunity as we stop that trade to actually be able to increase the number of people who we welcome to Australia through the offshore program. It used to be 13,750 people. We've taken it up to 20,000. We want to be able to look at going to 27,000. If there is a change of government, the Liberal Party have promised to take it back to 13,750. That's the promise they've made. Now, working through the refugee quota is always difficult. I mentioned before what I'm trying to do for people affected in Palestine, or Palestinians. I've also been trying to have a particular emphasis on people who have fled Syria. I made that decision some weeks ago. And obviously now that's become more important than ever. The Rohingya in Myanmar is a more difficult situation. The main thing that's happening there at the moment has been the work through the United Nations, and Bob Carr's done a lot here at trying to actually get better protection for the Rohingya within Myanmar, because that's going to be more effective than an offshore program. It's different for every community. But ultimately, there is one question that you need to ask when you're saying, are you serious about wanting to help refugees, and are you serious about saying the only reason for the issues about boats is because you want to stop people from drowning? And it's this question: If that people smuggling trade stops, do you respond by wanting to help more people or wanting to help fewer? We want to help more.
Can I respond? Look, I just wanted to clarify a policy position that was just presented that I believe to be incorrect. Our humanitarian intake is and will be 13,750 people. That is not inclusive of irregular maritime arrivals. That is a number that is consistent and will stay. The 20,000 that was made reference to, it's my understanding, does not, it actually includes boat arrivals. It will cut out. So if you take this year as an example, I don't know how long 20,000 has taken. It's probably 6 months, Tony, you're the minister. How many people? No, if the boat stopped, but that's a very fine point. 20,000 people, no, excuse me, thank you. 20,000 people have arrived in the first 6 months of this year. Now, under the Labor policy, that means no humanitarian intake. Be very clear. Under our policy, if we had 20,000 people arrive, we would still take 13,750 people on a humanitarian intake. So I just want to be very clear because the point that was raised earlier is not correct. And I've sat and I've listened to a lot of things tonight and it's been a partisan affair. But this position from us is very, very clear. We will take 13,750 above those that arrive irregularly by boat.
Sorry, very quickly, but just the claim that the quota is full is factually untrue. Factually untrue. I've signed off, we've got people working with the United Nations right now in different parts of the world, finding people who are most in need and bringing them here. Factually untrue.
We need to move on to the next question. There are so many questions, guys. But this one about a tragedy of someone here. Someone, what's his name? Iyad Abu Auja. Who's Iyad Abu Auja? Ah, hi Iyad. So Iyad, this is quite emotional. I was jailed in Israel for 30 months as I entered Ben Gurion Airport. None of you parties have done any effort to release me and stand with me. Why? Why did you abandon me? Immigration Minister.
I don't know the circumstances of your situation. I'm happy to talk to you afterwards, but I'm not going to guess when I don't know.
And can I say my response is the same because I don't know, but if there's anything that you can bring to me, can I suggest you talk to Craig and bring it to my attention? If there's anything that I can do or we can do, I'm happy to look at that. Can I say, Mr. Chairman, if I'm going to catch my plane, I'm going to have to depart now.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I have to finish, go slightly before the finish of the questions, but I'll leave you in Craig's good hands to answer questions on behalf of the Liberal Party. Thank you. And can I again say to the Grand Mufti and to the members of the Council, it's a great honour to be here tonight, and can I congratulate you on your initiative, Excellency, in terms of putting on this forum. Thank you.
Now we still have a few minutes before we get dinner. So again, a lot of questions. I'm sure we won't be able to go through them. If I don't go through one of your questions, blame him. Yeah, he gives me the questions. So now, carbon tax and climate change. What are your party's position on carbon tax and emissions? both the good side and the bad side. The good side, we have a cleaner, more sustainable Australia. The sharp end of it, we end up paying more for our gas and electricity bills, and we are not a rich community.
Very short and sweet. The Prime Minister has made the announcement in the last few weeks that if re-elected, we will move from a carbon tax to an emissions trading scheme. That's the approach that the government has always wanted to adopt. That's the approach that John Howard proposed before the 2007 election. The Liberal Party and the Labor Party 6 years ago both agreed on this, that the best way to reduce the emissions that Australia creates is with an emissions trading scheme. And then Tony Abbott became the Leader of the Opposition and decided that, excuse my language, climate change is crap. So we had an opposition that refused to take up the position of John Howard. The Prime Minister has been very clear here. The way to tackle this issue is by using the market. There are many businessmen and women in the room. They know that business is better at tackling these issues and setting the right price than governments are. Governments make mistakes when they try and tackle issues like this. So by setting up a market mechanism and linking it to the world, it's the cheapest way for Australia to reduce its emissions. That's the approach that we will take, and the opposition's position, we'll hear what they say, but really is to do nothing on this at all.
Thank you.
Well, let's be clear, the two major parties both have a commitment to a reduction in Australia's emissions by 2020 of 5% on the year 2000 level. In the year 2000, Australia emitted about 550 million tonnes of carbon dioxide and equivalents. On a business as usual basis, we'll be heading for about 680 million tonnes. And so that commitment to reduce to a number of about 520, 530, that is 550 less 5%, is a very significant one. It is a bipartisan commitment. Where we differ is in the policy tool that would be used to achieve that objective. The Coalition's policy on this issue has been consistent for over 3 years. Our plan is the Direct Action Plan, which involves a competitive tendering process to purchase abatement opportunities and to acquire the best value abatement opportunities. So to give you an example, if a brown coal-fired power station, if the operators of that were to come to government and say, we are proposing to upgrade this to natural gas-fired, which would emit less emissions per tonne, and we're going to spend X $100 million to do that, and we want a contribution from government, then that would be assessed as a proposal against all the other proposals that came forward. They'd be ranked in terms of dollar abatement achieved per dollar spent. So this is a business-based approach, a tendering approach, a competitive tendering approach. And so the other aspect of our policy, of course, is that we are going to remove the carbon tax because of the, amongst other things, the impact that it has had throughout the economy.
Now, in the last 5 minutes, there are I was trying to avoid those two topics. I was trying to avoid Egypt and Syria, but you can't. You can't avoid Egypt and Syria. So, in spite of Hussam, I'm going to ask both parties about their views, and it's a moving situation, as we know. But we have had a revolution in Egypt, we had an elected government in Egypt, and then we had a revolution against the revolution. We had the old jailed, a military coup, exactly. And now we have a situation where the elected president is in jail and the non-elected president is out of jail. I'm very keen to hear what your thoughts are regarding Egypt.
Syria as well. Come to Syria next. Okay. Can I say two things? One, because some misinformation went out and some people presumed, because of a statement that I made a couple of weeks ago, that the refugee program would only be available to Coptic people who had fled Egypt. That is factually wrong, okay? I just want people to know that. People There are a number of places where you work directly with specific groups, and there is a small program where we work directly with the Coptic community, but that does not mean in any way, shape or form that the refugee program is somehow limited. People who have fled persecution, that is the key to whether or not they get access. So I needed to clear that up for everybody with respect to Egypt. Can I simply say, and we've received some criticism from this from some people within Australia who have wanted us to take particular positions, but I think Bob Carr's previously referred to the fact that the government of Australia cannot support a military coup. We can't. And it is difficult, it is constantly moving and changing, but at its core, we want to see Egypt back on a path to democracy. The challenges there, we want to get the most peaceful outcome that is possible. But the key starting point has been to acknowledge what's happened and to acknowledge it for the military coup that it is.
It is an extremely difficult issue. As the US has said, this is a democratically elected government, and what has happened therefore is extremely troubling. We obviously want to see order restored, and that country, as all other countries, achieve self-determination.
I'll start with you, Paul, and I'll move you to Syria. I mean, we have seen some terrible civil war, and we might be moving to a more bloody chapter. What's your views on what's happening in Syria?
The coalition is obviously appalled by the horrific things that we have seen in Syria. Like people around the world, we want to see peace restored. We want to see the bloodshed end, particularly the bloodshed in terms of civilians, and we will naturally, as a responsible member of the community of nations, lend whatever support we can through diplomatic processes towards that end.
You'll still find on various social media sites streams of abuse directed at me for comments that I've made about the Assad regime. I don't resile from a word of it, and I think that the criticisms that I've made over a long period of time of the Assad regime, those people who've thought that I was out of line when I've said them have gone very, very quiet of late. The circumstance there is one now where there are things moving relatively quickly. You hear that on the news. But the one thing that I think is particularly important for us to know on this, and obviously Prime Minister Rudd's been involved in a number of discussions over the last few days, and this will continue to develop. But I am so proud, and even though we were criticised by the Liberal Party when we made the bid, I am so proud that when you get a crisis like this, the Prime Minister of Australia rings other countries as a voting member of the Security Council. And that gives us, as a nation, a level of authority in these international discussions, which at the time you think, why would we want it? And right now, you can see why.
And I think very soon we will be taking the presidency of the United Nations Security Council, so even more leverage. Now at this juncture, I would like to thank Paul for coming all the way from Gordon, and Craig for being with us, and of course for Kevin. And on this side, I would like to thank you both. And I know in a time like this, in a position like yours, it's always very hard to find the time, but I appreciate you making the effort to make the time to be with us here. So thank you very much, all of you. Special thanks to the ambassadors that are here with us today. They travelled all the way from Canberra just to be with us. Thank you. Now we have a distinguished Muslim politician in this room. His name is Adham Yusich. And Adham, you are an inspiration to us. Not from a political point of view, from just a personal, from a young Muslim who comes from a Bosnian background, who came here as a refugee probably, and an immigrant, and then made it all the way to politics. And we would like to hear your personal reflection, and I would like to invite you to the pedestal to share with us your experience.
Assalamu alaikum. And merhaba. It is so good to be with you here tonight with my colleagues and friends, Tony Burke and Jason Clare, and also colleagues from the other side of politics in Paul Fletcher and Craig. We've still got an election to go, so I do welcome you here tonight, but I also, in particular, if I may, acknowledge a special friend here in John Murphy. John Murphy, yes, please. John has been someone that has been, I have valued his advice, his friendship, and has helped me in my first term as a member, but I also know his deep love of his community and the fact that he's helped a lot across all different groups within his community, and it is great to spend time with someone like John and also Daryl Mellum, who's made it here this evening as well. Good evening. And if I can, Grand Mufti, thank you very much, Effendi, for letting me spend the time here tonight. Thank you. Friends, there are two important things I would like to say. Firstly, if I can say, there's my European background, using my hands and causing trouble while I speak. My parents came here from the former Yugoslavia in the late 1960s. And they came from, obviously one side of the world to the other. We had no family here. This is a story that many of you can relate to. No family or friends necessarily here. They had to start from scratch. And I have to say to you, it is of enormous pride that in one generation, in this great country of Australia, that I have had the honour to be elected to our nation's parliament. What this says about our country is incredible, that regardless of your background and your faith, that the doors are open, and that for people who want to take part in this great democracy, we are able to do so. This, friends, says a lot about this country, and it also reminds us too of what we must do day in, day out, that if we want to enjoy those freedoms, that we will work together across faiths and across cultures to protect this very special part of the world where 7 million people have come here after World War II and made this place their home. But I also, every day, can I say to you, I am so enormously thankful that I've had this opportunity, this great honour to be a Member of Parliament in a great democracy like Australia. And to also, if I can say yes, and I felt this when I first took my oath in Parliament, but I also felt this enormously on the day that I was able to be sworn in to the ministry and to be able to take this on the Quran. It's been something special to me, something special to us all here, and that, can I say, as much as people focus on the harsh words, can I just let you know this? The level of support I had, not just from so many of you here, which I cannot thank you enough, from deep within me, the support that you gave me, but also importantly from the broader community. The level of support that came in from across faiths at that moment was extraordinary, and you should know this. It is important that you know this. It was incredible that people across all different beliefs recognised that it was important, as I said on the floor of the House of Representatives, that we had all the children of Abraham under the one house. This is important. So I cannot, for the end of my days, I cannot thank you enough for what you support and love you gave to me and to my family. But can I also make this other very important observation tonight? You know, I think it would have taken a lot to imagine we would be at the situation where we are today, where we have major political parties seeking the opportunity to speak with you in the way that they have tonight. This is very, very important, because what it does is it recognises something very special, and that is that Muslims from all over the world who have made Australia their home are being brought in this way, very important way, with both sides of politics seeking your counsel and your support. Do not underestimate for any minute how important this is. Because, friends, as I said, we need to all work together, and we cannot let fear speak for people, and we cannot let hate speak for people. What we need to have speaking for people is a commitment that all, regardless of faith, that their opinions are sought, and importantly that their contributions are also valued. And so what's happened here tonight is a reflection of this, and please do not leave without thinking of that the Muslim community, that all the different cultures that make up within the Muslim community, their support is being sought in an election year. This is not politics, this is about Australia and about recognising we all play a part and we should not be divided. So on these difficult issues you saw in the questions tonight, there are difficult issues that from time to time both political parties have to deal with, and we have to deal with it and navigate it in the broader democracy. It is important, as I said, that everyone be involved. And as much as I am a very strong supporter of the notion of a secure Israel, I am also strongly supportive of this, that when the decision came to work out whether or not Palestine should be involved in a greater level within the United Nations, that there were a number of us that were pushing strongly for a yes vote from Australia. I was one of them. And the reason I say that we need to keep pushing for this is because we could not have a situation where we said to Palestine that they should not have a presence. This was a humiliating position to have. Palestine should be involved in the UN. Israel is involved in the UN. People should be brought together. We are stronger, if I can say, when we work together. And we need to continue to work. As much as we got to a position of abstention, we need to work to make sure that Palestine is brought in and involved, because it is the right thing to do. So I leave my remarks at this, if I may. I just want to say again, I'm greatly honoured to have the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm also very thankful that I am not the person that is stopping dinner and that it is allowed to occur. But can I again reinforce my deep gratitude for your support and my commitment to always just to do the right thing. We should feel free to be who we are and to recognise that Australia lets us do this. Thank you, friends.